Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Okay, everybody. I'm very happy to be back with you again. I guess maybe some of you are new to the Gita Collective, but the majority of you were probably here with us last month as we went through the entire Bhagavad-gītā. Every day there was reading to do. And we took 1 month off, and now we're getting back into studying the Gita from a different angle, in a different way. But I think that's what we'd like to continue to do with this is 1 month on, 1 month off. I know that many of you went over all the exact same, you heard all of the different tapes or recordings and went through all the different sections of verses and did through the whole Gita again in the month of October. I applaud that effort, and I really love the idea of people getting excited about the Bhagavad-gītā, or maybe we could say, and this will tie into today's thing, but waking up to it, becoming that one becomes excited about it, and maybe less excited about other things that distract us in life. So good to be back. This month we're going to be examining the vision of the Bhakti Yogi. It's going to be a 31-day journey through the Bhagavad-gīta's teachings on spiritual sight, right? The vision of the yogi. And, the Gita, it's not only a philosophy of how to act in the world, but it's also a guide of how to see, or you could say how to understand what we see in this world. It's common that the word sight or seeing is related to understanding. And so every verse that we study this month will revolve around this theme, the transformation of vision, the transformation of understanding. The yogi is one who learns to see differently, not just with the eyes, but with, in English, what we call insight, right? The English word insight is defined as the capacity to gain an accurate or deep intuitive understanding of a person or a thing. Insight, right? And so with the yogic understanding, insight becomes all the more appropriate term, because part of it has to do with seeing within, understanding the self, understanding God within, and so on. So that's what we'll be getting into. I've gone through the Bhagavad-gītā and looked for where it speaks about sight. And in Sanskrit, the idea of seeing is expressed through several verbal roots, and each one carries a little bit of different shade of meaning. I'm not expert in Sanskrit, but I'll share, what I've found through my studies and going back and looking at these verses. But maybe the most common root about seeing in the Bhagavad-gītā is pash, P-A-S, or like you could say P-A-S-H, pash, pash, which means to see or observe. And from this, we get words like pashyati, he sees, or pashyataha, one who sees. And it suggests perception or observation, seeing the world as it is. And then there's another root, drish, to look or to have vision. And this root gives us darshan, or darshin, the seer, and darshana, vision, or revelation, or even like philosophy. Darshan, like the different classical schools of that we find of ancient Indian philosophy are called darshanas, viewpoints, you could say, right? Seeing, different ways of seeing. So darshana or drish is related to all that. And here's applying not only to sight but insight, the ability to see through to the essence of something. And then there's the third root, iksh, which means to behold something attentively, to perceive carefully. So from this we get the word ikshite that we find in the Bhagavad-gītā. It means he beholds or he observes, suggesting a gaze that's filled with awareness and care, a kind of seeing that's born from contemplation, right? Very carefully analyzing something to go deeper into it. So pash, drish, iksh, all of these are referring to seeing, and throughout the Bhagavad-gītā we've gathered verses with these and categorized them into 4 different categories for the next 4 weeks. And each week we'll go a little deeper into a yogi's vision. And when I say deeper, I mean that vision could go into deeper places. So by the end of this month, our goal isn't just simply to understand how the yogi sees, it's to begin seeing more that way ourselves, with clarity, with equality, with steadiness. And in the deepest vision is a vision of love that the yogi has. Week number 1 will be seeing reality within illusion. Week number 2 will be seeing spirit. When I say seeing reality within illusion, it means, that kind of fundamental jnana, that fundamental insight of understanding what is real and what is not, and where should I be focused and where should I be letting go. And week 2 has to do with seeing spirit within matter, being able to recognize the self, the soul within matter, within different types of bodies, its journeys that it's going through, etc. Samadarshana becomes important there, equal vision. And then in week 3, it'll be seeing with an even mind, samatvam. And this even mindedness, when one can see, for instance, stone and gold is the same, or what to speak of well-wishers and people that wish one harm, when they can see them the same, one begins to be able to enter into deeper areas of yoga. We're going to read from the 6th chapter. 13th chapter has beautiful verses on that. So that'll be week number 3. And then week number 4 has to do with seeing Krishna everywhere, right? How the bhakti yogi sees Krishna within everything and everything in connection to Krishna. Very deep level of sight that Krishna is asking us to come to. So this month we'll be going on all 4 of these different levels, going deeper and deeper and deeper into the insight of a bhakti yogi. Week number 1, we kind of have 2 extra days because we have this today, Saturday, Sunday, and then all the way up until the following Sunday. That'll be week number 1. And then week number 2 will be, so that's November 1st through 9th. Week number 2 will be November 10th through 16th. Week number 3 will be November 17th through 23rd. Week number 4 will be November 24th through 30th. And each week I will be sharing a short video, not as long as the other ones, I believe. I won't have to cover nearly as much. Sometimes I was covering whole chapters in one lesson. Now I'm going to sometimes I'll be dealing with just one verse in a lesson, or maybe a small group of verses. So I anticipate these videos being a bit shorter, or this one will be a little bit longer because I'm sharing this introduction. All right, so why don't we go ahead and dive in? Let's begin with the first text that we want to look at today, and that is seeing reality within the illusion, right? And we're looking at a really fundamental and important text, and that is Bhagavad-gītā 2:69. This is a verse that's preceded by verses about getting our senses under control. And then when one's senses are under control, one sees the world in a different way. And when one sees the world in a different way, then the texts that follow this talk about the peace that one experiences when one does see the world in a different way. So I wanted to look at text 269. But before I do, let me just share kind of an analogy for this. Imagine 2 people standing before a large Rothko painting, which is showing like vast fields of color. There's like deep orange and yellow dissolving into a pale background. There's no real other figures in this. There's no real story being told through it. And you could say there's really no clear message in such a painting. And one of the persons is glancing at it and thinks there's nothing of interest here. It's just some rectangles. So to them, it's nothing more than paint on canvas, just flat and simple. And maybe even they'll feel it's a little absurd, right? They're hanging this in a museum. Anyone could have just painted these rectangles. And another person stands before the same painting, and they kind of let their eyes rest and enter into the painting. And they let their breathing slow down. And as they stand there, within them, something begins to shift. And the colors seem to almost breathe, and the boundaries kind of blur. And the surface, to them, they're perceiving it less like paint on canvas and more like space. There's like kind of, for them, there's kind of like a quiet depth to this vision that they're beholding. And so for them, it's not just a painting anymore. It feels like a doorway into something, a doorway into another world, a doorway into stillness or peace or warmth. Different people might perceive it in different ways, but they're looking at the exact same painting and having a very different understanding, a very different experience, a very different feeling. Both people are looking at the exact same thing, and the painting hasn't changed at all. But what they see, what they experience is completely different. And that's what we're about to explore in this verse, Bhagavad-gītā 2:69, is how two people can stand before the same world, right? We're all living in the same world, and yet two people can see it in completely different ways. One sees the surface of things, and the other sees through that surface, past that surface, to something that's beyond it, or something that's within it, but that's eternal. And so let's look at the verse. This is verse 269. Ya nisha sarvabhutanim tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mune. Right, there's the vision right there, the sight, seeing, pashyato. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. All right, let's go deeper into it. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam. What is night for all living beings? Tasyam jagarti samyami is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. The word samyami comes from the root samyam, and it means self-restraint or self-control, the ability to hold the mind steady rather than just letting it run wherever it wants, right? And by controlling the mind, controlling the senses, right? Rather than letting them pull us, we pull them in. And then the ending of the word samyami, the E at the end, it just means one who has this quality. So a samyami is literally one who practices restraint and self-control, like a self-controlled person. The root here is sama, which means like equal or even or balanced. And from sama, we get the word that we discussed quite a bit last month, samatva, or evenness, right? Samatva, the even-mindedness of the yogi, right? So a samyami is someone whose self-control has led to samatva, or an inner evenness, an inner balance, an inner equanimity, to a mind that remains steady, whether there's success or failure, whether there's joy or sorrow, whether there's fame or infamy, hot or cold, right? The mind is staying the same. So the two are connected. Through self-restraint, we learn equanimity, and through equanimity, real self-mastery becomes possible, right? So the verse continues, Yasyam jagrati bhutani, and the time of awakening for all beings, sa nisha pashyato mune, is the night for the introspective sage. So pashyata here means for the introspective one, right? Who sees with deeper insight. Pashyata mune, the sage who is seeing with deeper insight. So this verse is saying that it's not only that they're seeing the world differently, but they're awake. Some people are awake to something that's going on and asleep to something else, right? Most people are moving through this world. For those that are not self-controlled, for those that are being pulled by their senses and controlled by the programming within the mind, then they're very awake to the shiftings of this world. They're very awake to what's moving and what's shifting. That there's gain and there's loss and there's something that they think is out there that's going to bring them happiness that comes and then it goes. They're very awake to that world. They're operating within it. It's all they know in one sense. And they're asleep to all the spiritual ideas, that there is some energy that's not shifting, for instance. They're trying to make the constantly shifting energy steady, although it can never really be done. And they're asleep to the idea that there's a steady energy right there all along, their own inner self, right? And all the spiritual content that the sages are aware of, or meditate on, or engage with, right? So they're awake to the material shifting world, they're asleep to the spiritual understanding. Whereas the introspective sage, they're awake to the eternal. They're awake to their own spiritual nature. They're awake to the presence of God within everything, and everything within God, and ultimately the deeper personal love that is that can be engaged with on the spiritual level. And they're asleep to the rest of it, in a sense. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're not responsible in the world, or they're not getting things done in the world, but it means it's not what excites them. It's not where their awareness is naturally drawn and excited about. And really what they do is they find a way to turn all of their dealings within the material energy into a spiritual practice, into something that feeds and serves their deepening of their spiritual awareness, you could say the deeper, or let's say the arising of their awareness of the spiritual, right? That whether they're a mother or a father or a business person or whatever role they may play in this world, they begin to adjust it in such a way where they relate to that effort as something that's being done in consciousness of and as an offering to Krishna. And in this way, they're always awake to the spiritual and to the things that may have distracted them, or obsessed them even, or captured their attention. The material shifting world, the superficial, less significant things in this world that are constantly shifting on the surface, they begin to fall asleep to that. They begin to lose interest in that. That kind of part, that part of them has kind of quietly drifted off. This is the introspective sage. So this is text 269. It's a beautiful. I'll read the translation again. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. And let me just read some of the verses that precede that, and come after that. Just to put it in context here. So in this is text, the previous verse, text 68. Therefore, O mighty armed Arjuna, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is the night for the introspective sage. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the person who strives to satisfy such desires. So by becoming asleep to all of the things that generate material desires in this world, losing interest in that because we've awakened to a deeper spiritual idea, then even we're living in this world where all of that content is flowing in like rivers into the ocean. So many rivers flow into the ocean, but the ocean stays the same, right? It doesn't move. It kind of stays steady where it is. Our awareness can become like that in this world. And for that person, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, that person alone can attain real peace. In the final verse of chapter 2, that is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a person is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So I find this verse that we're reading, 269, it's kind of like a strong statement of how our awareness can shift right? And how we can awaken to what's more significant or more important. And what I want to do now, and I'll be doing this with each lesson, and again, you'll have about 2, or in most cases 3 videos and little lessons like this and meditations per week. I want to share with you an exercise, something that you can do for the next few days before the next one. Today's Saturday, I'll probably release the next one maybe on Tuesday, and then one more maybe on Thursday or Friday next week. Okay. And so here we go. Exercise number 1. You don't have to do this, but this could be a way that you kind of deepen your absorption this month in the Bhagavad-gītā. Exercise for lesson 1. Spend some quiet minutes over the next few days, perhaps morning and evening, to reflect on the following questions. And this is something that you might want to do a little journaling, write this down. Think about it deeply. Okay, the world's waking life is filled with shifting, gain and loss, praise and blame, comfort and discomfort. One person is fully awake in that realm, constantly alert to the shifts of material happiness and distress, engaged in them, trying to shift them for the purpose of their enjoyment, yet they are drowsy toward the spiritual reality that lies beneath it all. And another person lives the opposite way, awake to the inner world, alert to the self and to Krishna, while letting the noise of the temporary ups and downs fade away like dreams. Now ask yourself the following, and you don't have to analyze this too hard, or in other words, you don't have to judge yourself too harshly. Just try to ask the question and answer it with honesty, right? Just observe your own inner world and just answer it honestly. Question number 1, where am I awake to the material and asleep to the spiritual? In what ways does my attention chase the shifting happiness and distress of the external world? Okay, that's question number 1. Now, question number 2, where am I asleep to the material and awakening, we could say maybe, to the spiritual? When do I naturally feel drawn toward the eternal nature, the truth, or to devotion to God, right? And the outer noise is beginning to fade, right? Where is that awake in my life? Is that growing in my life? And finally, number 3, what is one small step I can take today to help the material world fall a little more silent and to help my spiritual awareness awaken a little bit more fully? We always need to know what's that next step, right? What can I do? What can I shift? What move can I make to take another step forward? So that's the first lesson for this time. This was about a 23-minute class. I think the other ones will be shorter. I'm thrilled to be back with you again. I'm excited to be studying again like we did back in September. I think I'll be giving an announcement about this soon, but we have this new channel that you're seeing this video through, new WhatsApp channel. And we have the old WhatsApp group, and maybe we'll keep that group for asking questions or just sharing your own experiences. So I'll give an announcement about that sometime soon. But I'm happy about ways that we can engage together. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you so much for spending this time with the Bhagavad-gītā. We got so much feedback from September about how that regular engagement with Bhagavad-gītā is really making people's spiritual lives come alive. And that's a fact. That will happen when we read it with an openness and with a sincerity. So thank you all again. And I'll be back with you in a few days. I think on Tuesday, I'll probably check in again with the next meditation. Thank you so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.